For most of history, the Arctic was just this frozen, mystical frontier at the very edge of the map. But today, that ice is vanishing, and it's turning what was a forgotten wasteland into the world's newest and maybe most critical geopolitical hotspot. So, what's really driving this new race for the North? Let's get into it. Okay, so everything that's happening right now, all the tension, all the opportunity, it all starts with one massive, undeniable fact. There's a dramatic environmental transformation happening at the very top of our planet. And this transformation, it poses this huge central question that's forcing global powers to act. I mean, as this brand new ocean literally emerges from the ice, who's going to get to write the rules? Who's going to claim its treasures? To really get the urgency here, you have to understand the sheer speed of this change. The Arctic is warming up about 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. That is just a staggering rate of change for such a huge and vital ecosystem. And this isn't some slow motion change we're talking about. The numbers are just wow. According to data from places like NASA, a massive 70% of the Arctic's ice volume has disappeared just since the 1980s. We're not talking about a distant future scenario here. We could be looking at completely ice-free summers within our own lifetimes. So with that environmental stage set, let's look at the human story. Because, while this new race feels very modern, humanity's fascination and its ambition in the Arctic is actually centuries old. The whole region has basically transformed. It went from a place you went to get famous or just test the limits of human survival to a high-stakes chessboard where nations are carefully positioning their pieces for future control. And this has been building for a long, long time. The Arctic has always been on the world's radar. You see it with the ancient Greeks looking for Thule, the Vikings settling Greenland, and then for centuries, all those explorers obsessively hunting for the Northwest Passage. Even during the Cold War, this was a critical frontier. It was the shortest flight path for nuclear bombers between the US and the Soviet Union. So the interest was always there. It was the ice that kept everyone's ambitions in check. So what changed? Well, the melting ice. It's basically unfurling a treasure map that's been locked away for millennia. And what that map is revealing is what's driving this modern-day rush. There are 2 main prizes that are drawing the world's attention north. First, what's underneath the seabed, a huge trove of untapped natural resources. And second, what's on the surface, brand new, dramatically shorter shipping lanes that could connect the globe like never before. All right, let's start with the resources. A big U.S. Geological Survey study back in 2018 estimated that the Arctic holds a massive share of the world's remaining untapped fossil fuels, something like 13% of the oil and a staggering 30% of the natural gas. Now, these are just estimates, of course, but when you're talking about numbers that big, it's pretty much impossible for energy-hungry nations to ignore. But hey, it's not just about old energy. The Arctic is also absolutely critical for the new energy economy. It's got huge deposits of what people are calling green minerals. Things like lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements, the building blocks for everything from EV batteries to wind turbines. Greenland, in particular, is a real hotspot. It might hold almost all of the minerals the U.S. considers vital for its own national security. Now for that second prize, the new sea lanes. As the ice opens up, 3 main routes are starting to look possible, and each one has its own pros and cons. You've got the Northwest Passage running through Canada. It's shorter, but it's tricky. The transpolar route cuts right across the pole, but it's still really dangerous. And then there's the big one, the Northern Sea route, right along Russia's coast. It could slash travel time from Europe to Asia by up to 40%. But there's a huge catch. It's almost entirely controlled by Moscow. So the promise of all these resources and these new routes has kicked off an intense modern-day competition. The pieces are on the board, and the race for the North is officially on. Honestly, the best way to think about what's happening is to picture a 21st century gold rush. The rules are still being written, the territory is newly accessible, and everybody is scrambling to get there first and secure their interests before their rivals can. And this competition has a very distinct military flavor to it. Russia has been incredibly proactive, reopening over 50 old Soviet-era military bases, and basically calling the Arctic its own strategic backyard. The West is now really playing catch-up, pouring money into new Arctic strategies and running huge military exercises with NATO allies to show that it's taking this threat seriously. And Russia's head start becomes crystal clear when you look at just one key piece of hardware: icebreakers. You absolutely need them to operate up there year-round. Russia has this massive fleet of almost 40 of them because, well, its entire northern border is the Arctic. It's a strategic necessity. The United States, which historically has focused on open oceans, has one heavy icebreaker, and it's almost 50 years old. That gap creates a huge logistical and operational advantage for Moscow. And the tension isn't just military, it's also diplomatic. This quote from Canada's former foreign minister came right after a Russian expedition planted a flag on the seabed right at the North Pole. It was pure political theater, sure, but it was also seen as a direct challenge to the international laws that are supposed to govern all these claims. It sent a really clear message that sparked international outrage and just showed how raw the nerves were, even way back in 2007. So yeah, this is no longer just a regional issue for the 8 Arctic nations. Powers from far away, like China, are now calling themselves near-Arctic states and are investing heavily to make sure they get a seat at the table. This competition has officially gone global. All of this brings us to the final critical question. The starting gun for the Arctic race has been fired. The future of this huge, newly opened frontier now really hangs in the balance, leaving all of us to wonder if its destiny will be one of peaceful cooperation and shared stewardship, or if it's about to become the world's next great zone of conflict.